Welcome to another episode of Catalyzing Radical Systemic Change, where it's all about mapping, discovering, and cross-pollinating what I think are the necessary building blocks towards a planetary civilization ahead. And as we know, money makes the world go round. So today's topic is integral investing. And I'm feeling very grateful to be in this joint virtual room together with Dr. Mariana Bozesan. She's a dear friend and deep into investing. And my first question today for you, Mariana, is when you look at your own biography, what were the defining turning points that made you who you are and ultimately commit your purpose to integral investing?
Well, Alistair, it's a great pleasure to be on your program. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a privilege. And I've known you for such a long time, and it's been beautiful to work together and to see how you deeply care about what's happening to us and how you're contributing to making the world a better place. So thank you for having me. I was born and raised in communist Romania, and which, of course, taught me the importance of equality between men and women, between, in general, humanity and diversity. It was a society where we had free education, free healthcare, free of everything, at least in theory, that the society, the form of government was driven by people who were more or less evolved, just as it is the case in capitalism. They never really succeeded, just like we are not succeeding in capitalism either. So I learned very early on that being a woman is normal. It's in terms of, and I need to oppose that, to contrast that to what I was faced with in Germany when at age 16, my parents and I immigrated, where I was told that as a woman, you can't do math. You have to study languages, or you're more stupid than others. And I was also surprised to see that there was no support for working women. I'm talking here about Western Germany. That's no different in Eastern Germany. Thank God, those ideals of communism had an influence on the society in general, and the positive sides. But anyway, so communism actually laid the great foundation for my questioning things. For instance, religion. I didn't grow up as a religious person. Still am not religious. I'm a spiritual person, but not religious. And so later on, I learned capitalism, and of course, no need to go into the details of a much better form of government than communism. But I now have arrived at a point in my life where I am questioning what is the better form of government, and how can democracy evolve so that we can save ourselves and save the future of life on the planet. So these are the two important points in my life, capitalism and communism as governance forms. And of course, inequality is a result of capitalism. Not to say that communism works better, but this is not a conversation about capitalism or communism. I studied anyway. I studied computer science. I followed my dream of studying math, and I ended up in studying artificial intelligence, which brought me to Stanford University. I graduated in building expert systems for artificial intelligence. So that was an important contribution in my life to what you call the defining topic of our conversation, integral investing. One other thing that I wanted to also emphasize is the religion aspect. I grew up as an atheist, of course, in communism, and didn't believe in church, still don't, although I see the need for an organization to be in place. But because I was so conflicted and I didn't have any spiritual foundation due to my upbringing, I lacked one. And just like Mother Teresa said, I was spiritually deprived. If you don't have a grounding. of where we're coming from, where are we going after our death. And so I had to start looking into that, being forced by various challenges in life. And I began meditating 42 years ago, and I was a closet mystic for the first 20 years of my life, because although I saw the need for a spiritual life, I didn't see how I could reconcile that in my head and in the society as a scientist, who meditates. And until later, and so that's the foundation of integral investing. The grounding in a deep integral sustainable spirituality. So I think those are the three major defining points of my life.
When I imagine you starting your career as an investor, and again looking on like the influences that you had in the various life's phases, how did your own approach of investing, I reckon you started with like impact investing, and how did your approach like develop over the years? Because I read the book, it came out a couple of years ago, but I reckon there was a lot of like wrestling with the market. How do you see it going? And then finding your own answer and your own approach. So I'm curious in the different, let's say, evolutionary stages of your own approach within investing.
I didn't start as an investor. I started as a computer scientist working in artificial intelligence for a Silicon Valley startup. So I was a computer scientist, and later on I had built a career as a top executive at major corporations, like the second largest computer company that was later acquired. It was called Digital Equipment, was later acquired by Hewlett Packard. And so and then I also worked for Oracle Corporation in Redwood Shores in Silicon Valley. And I didn't start as an investor. It was in the mid 90s, 99, actually, at the same time when Elon Musk was in Silicon Valley, that mid 90s, when 94, when we saw, my husband and I, he's also a computer scientist, we saw Mosaic. That was the first internet browser. And we knew, because we knew the internet. As a computer scientist, you had worked with the internet ever since I began studying, but we knew that now a new era was starting because now everyone was going to. So we saw that happening, an exponential growth of digitalization. And so we started a company in Silicon Valley, wanted to help people find houses in the Valley, and that failed due to the fact that the team didn't work together properly. We somehow didn't have the same, in understanding, knowing, and so on. Didn't know how to succeed. And so my husband and I then moved to Germany. I continued to work for Oracle Corporation, and my husband started a company which we co-started. He actually worked more intense on it to help companies, major corporations like Commerzbank and Shell and others get an internet presence and we're writing the year 1994, and only to find out that most people didn't have a clue. What is the internet? Well, why do we need that? What is the goal of this? And let alone they didn't have access to the internet. So we were way ahead of our time, and so then we decided that I decided to invest. My husband decided to start the company together with others to bring people onto the internet, to provide internet access. So that was the beginning of me being an investor. And that was pre-bubble, pre the 2000 years. So the company was founded in December 94, and it went public 2 years later. Actually, it went public with the first internet stock that was available in Germany. and was an IPO. We had an exit. And of course, all of a sudden, if you grow up dirt poor, like I was in communist Romania, I went to school often without food, and my teeth were damaged because I didn't have the proper nutrition, and so on and so on. And all of a sudden, we had an IPO. That changed our entire life. And as always, I looked for coaches because I looked for support. Like, how do you lead your life in the midst of all this, IAI and communism and capitalism, and how do you integrate them all? And I came across Ken Wilber. I came across Tony Robbins at the end of the 1988, and he, through his coaching, through tapes and so on, and books, it was brilliant. Actually, he helped me achieve everything and anything I ever wanted. And it works. It worked. And but after 1997, everything changed because money or acquiring things was no longer an issue. And so it was actually, I went again to Tony Robbins, and we were traveling together around the world with amazing people. And it was in the desert of Morocco that it was late at night, that he mentioned the name Ken Wilber. And that was the time I came across the best lens through which I could look at the world, and that would help me make sense of what's actually going on in the world, holistically, not just, making money, starting a company, investing, and so on, but also leading my life, my interior life, and creating the relationships that I wanted, and the marriage that I wanted, and be fulfilled, be happy. And because, acquiring things, obviously, or studying and getting this diploma and getting up at Stanford, it was just very short-lived. So how can you be happy within, not through things, but just because you exist? And so that was the model. I came across it, all quadrants, all levels, all lines of development, the aqua, and this is what integral investing then became grounded on. And because I saw that something was really, really wrong with our world. On one hand, you go and during the day, Wall Street, make a lot of money. And then in the evening, you go and donate to set up what the system did wrong, and I've been brought up as a philanthropist by my beloved parents, who were very simple people, but they taught me what it means to be a philanthropist, namely a lover of people. This is what the word means. So from the little that they had, they gave to others. But I saw the craziness between for-profit organizations, for-profit only, at the expense of people and the planet, and then philanthropy trying to set it off a little bit, but not really succeeding, because if you look at where the main capital stock of philanthropic organization goes, it goes back to Wall Street, investing often against the mission of the philanthropic organization. So Ken Wilber's integral model helped me come up with a better way of exercising my raison d'etre on the planet. Like, how can I live and integrate, get rid of the schizophrenia, and integrate in my own life and in my own activities? So as a computer scientist, as an entrepreneur, serial entrepreneur, and as an investor, what is the best model that would help me integrate them all, so that we can ensure the future of life, that we can invest toward implementing the UN SDGs within planetary boundaries. As a member of the International Club of Rome, and I am a member thereof, we know, and I do anything and everything in my power to really contribute to going back to safe planetary boundaries. Because we have left, the planet tells us what needs to happen in order to provide for us but the operating system of the planet is no longer safe. And this is why we're experiencing, as we speak, as we have this interview, a terrible, terrible heat wave in Europe, which has a rather, wonderful climate. But that's the result of the planet responding to the global economic activity that is not sustainable that we have created. And so integral investing is basically, you asked for the definition, is the providing the model, the means, the metrics, and from my own perspective, my contribution toward building, implementing the UN SDGs within planetary boundaries by 2050, where we have to be carbon neutral through our activities. And so capital is an extremely important contributors to providing that. And I apply it, of course, with what I know the best, namely in early stage investing through building TEAL organizations, which is the modern name for organizations that are sustainable, integrally sustainable.
I would like to open up a conversation, because what we share in common, Mariana, as we both know, is we had like multiple epiphanies through meeting the model from Ken Wilber. And I'm curious, from like the first encounters and the sparkles of you trying to apply that model within your life, but now with the focus on investing, what were the things that were like flowing easily? So kind of in your biography, and you come up with a new model, and what were the things you were wrestling with, especially from an investing perspective? And again, I want to highlight my interest in like, the model is one thing, but then applying it, is always like testing, iterating, failing, and reapplying. So I'm curious on your various learnings and the cycles within you trying to implement that within investing.
Yeah, it's a very simple question with an extremely convoluted answer. So I think we need to go back to, there is no simple answer to what you just asked. And it all goes back to our individual understanding of who we are on this planet and why we are here. So Ken Wilber is a philosopher, and everybody else who wants to turn him into something else fails. So he's one of the smartest people on this planet today, and is a philosopher. So it's very, very complex. The moment I discovered his philosophy, I decided to go back and really, really study it. So I got my PhD in transpersonal psychology at the Institute for Transpersonal Psychology in Palo Alto, which was founded by some Harvard professors who were in the field of Richard Alpert and Ram Dass and so on. So they went west and started the institute. And so I spent 6 years really, really studying that in depth. Why? Because if we really want to use anything and everything, if we want to save ourselves, because humanity's future is at stake currently, it's just as simple as that. And if we want to really contribute with our little, whatever we have to offer to make the world a better place, we need to understand the bigger picture and then see how our little contribution can contribute to that. And if everyone and anyone does it, then we have hopes to really ensure the existence of consciousness on this planet, because life was, evolution created the universe in 13.8 billion years. Life came onto the planet like 1 billion years ago, and we are about to create it to make it extinct. So the question is, us conscious beings, looking at what's actually happening. How can we really be informed and have the wisdom to come up with the right solutions? And that's a very, very, very complex topic. So to make it simple, and there is no simple answer, is each and every one of us have to begin to realize that we are part of evolution. And when you look at yourself, you spend a third of your day sleeping, inner life, and 2/3 of the day looking on the outside, what we call reality. And if we want to come up with better solutions than the ones that we currently have that are not working, we need to begin to ask ourselves, what is that reality? And I am a scientist. I've studied physics and math. The reality that we see on the outside is like playing a video game where you have those AR goggles, and the moment you put it down and go to the bathroom, you're no longer in the game. But that's exactly how we perceive. We take this reality as the reality, but it's not. And we need to understand that the way we have used your mind in this world is not conducive to creating a better world, because it's currently creating destruction. So what are better ways? What is our consciousness evolution? Let me put it the different way. If we want to save ourselves, we need to come up from a different level of consciousness than the one that we currently have. And evolution, scientists tell us, individual evolution occurs from egocentric to ethnocentric, like my tribe and my country, to world-centric, and then universe spirit-centric. Now, what we're doing is currently acting from an egocentric, ethnocentric level of consciousness, which leads to the current destruction. So if you're asking me how we're using capital to make a better world, that cannot be issued from the same egocentric or ethnocentric, you would see Russia, for instance, that's ethnocentric level of consciousness, because that creates more destruction. So when I invest in people who have this higher, later level of consciousness, at least world-centric level of consciousness, because I know it's not about them or their tribe. They really care. So the money is well invested into really saving the future of life and ensuring the future of life. So
can I tie into
yeah,
that?
please.
Because I got really curious when you were mentioning, you were saying, when I'm investing in people, and this is like, I get really interested, because obviously you're investing in companies that are led by people that have business models, that have like products and services. So I wonder if it's a good time also in our encounter today to sketch a couple of examples where, and I don't mind like which, where ideally the business model from an integral lens makes a contribution in these, let's say, very definitely in dire times where we need business models that create a segue towards us as a species living in harmony with the planet and regenerating the harm we inflicted on the mother organism. And I want you to especially, maybe it's good as a story, because I know when you're searching and embedding and you're doing the due diligence process. So I'm curious how you tie the business model to the people. And ideally, you could explain why you're doing this, and also from an investment perspective, why this ultimately also pays off.
Yeah, I understand. People want a quick solution, and So let me go back. You mentioned I'm investing in companies. Of course, companies do not exist. A company is a construct. Yes, we do have legal structures and so on, but it's a construct. It's made by people. And our company construct and our financial models today are not conducive to ensuring the future of life. Why? Because the only measurement criterion for success is one metric, and that metric is money. Money only at the expense of everything else. So if you then say, oh, I want to change that. Of course, integral investing wants to contribute so that we change a system that is no longer, it helped us fly to the moon. It helped us create computers and technology so that we could have this conversation remotely and see each other and hear each other, which is wonderful, but is not sustainable. So what is a better model? And of course, using the aqua lens helped me see what could be the next step. And it's not a simple one. Why? Because we're working against existing structures, and those structures, there are a lot of people who don't understand the bigger pictures and don't bother to understand. But it is important. That's why if we're talking, having a conversation about the future of life and investing and how that can contribute, we need to really go top down and bottom up all the time at the same time. So today, entrepreneurs today, when they start a company, they have to make a decision because of the structures that we have. Do I start a not-for-profit, which is presumably good, right? They pretend to be better than others, or a for-profit organization that is doomed. For-profit is bad because of what we've done with the money. And of course, that's a dilemma. It's stupid. So the system in itself is stupid. So if I invest, I need to bypass these stupid structures by helping work around them, because I still get measured by financial, IRS and all these Finanzamt and all the others, they still want the bottom line, right? So how do I navigate that? Because I need to change the system, make a little contribution, create a better company until the bigger system changes, because governments change, legislate and come up with new ideas, new better structures, which are being forced now by nature. So from an integral perspective, in order to bypass that, I say, well, a not-for-profit, so I need to look at the people. Do people understand the stupidity between for-profit, not-for-profit? Do they understand that they have to open up their minds to, first of all, they need financial sustainability. Somebody is paying the bill for us. We use electricity. We need to buy a computer in order to have this conversation. We need to buy a microphone. We are having an internet. Everyone has to. We have a home. We have to pay rent. So money is as good as what we do with it. So it's a priori is neutral, right? So they need to understand they need to be financially sustainable. In the beginning, they won't, of course, but having a not-for-profit thing is not better than having a for-profit organization, right? For many reasons that I already mentioned. So people, the people that I'm investing into need to have this understanding, right? So the due diligence process goes through that. So they have to have a business plan, have a plan to become financially sustainable, to have a, integrally sustainable, do good for the planet and do good for themselves and for the people. And of course, how do you do that? I mean, people before they, when they seek money, they would promise everything and the moon, until they get it. And then they do with it whatever they can. So by setting up at a later stage of consciousness, cognitively, they have to understand what's actually going on. They have to have a business plan so that they can turn their idea into something that works. Let me give you an example. 30% of the CO2 emissions worldwide come from construction. It's cement, it's steel, it's aluminum, all the construction materials that are being used, they of course produce CO2. So if we, and not if, we must become carbon neutral by 2050 if we want to survive. And this is just carbon neutral, the emanation of what we are emitting, but we still have a lot of CO2 that is already being emitted that we need to sequester, right? So let's not talk about this. So as an investor and as a computer scientist, I am trying to see how can I contribute, right? With everything that I know and all the blessings that I've been given. So we looked at, and the digitalization is occurring. See, COVID showed us how important it is if we want to save ourselves, less trouble and so on. So digitalization. So data centers are needed in order to provide the computing power needed to provide all this, to have all these services. So that means you're building buildings in which there are data centers, computers emitting warmth and so on. So if I can find a technology that helps me reduce the CO2 emissions of data centers, that would be amazing. So we came across a technology that cools with water instead of air. Most data centers are cooled with air. But you know that air has to flow a lot, and we see if we open the window, it's not as cool than if you have a wall where water flows. So we came across this technology and we thought, wow, this is an amazing contribution, because you need, if you cool with water, you need 50% less construction materials. You need, entire across the board. You need less energy. It's all the maintenance over the, and you produce less CO2 emissions you don't produce what is called in investing stranded assets. So a building that in 30 years from now or 20 years from now has to be torn down and so on. I don't need to go into the details. So that was a worthwhile investment for us. So we could combine technology with water cooling with construction, and in a way that has a huge impact. And we just exited that. It took us 6 years, and we used this integral model in how we chose the investees. I was a co-founder myself. We were co-founders also, and we just exited that. And the financial return of this has been extraordinary, but across the board, we have returns of multiples of 7 multiples of the initial investment. And the same is true for the internal rate of return, that in this case was 57%. So across the board, everything benefits if you come in with a more integrated way of looking at things. Does this example, it's called NDC data centers that were just exited a couple of weeks ago. Does this answer your question?
Yeah. Can I incentivize you to give 1 or 2 examples from different sectors, even if you have not exited them, but more examples? And I would like to know, because you're screening a lot of things, and then there's also, there's metrics, but there's also intuition, then there's the people, then there's the model. So I'm curious let's cite at least 1, better maybe 2 more examples, and find out with you why you chose them, where are they standing, and why specifically from a lens of integral investing they're so worthwhile. Because from the first example I already get, even if people were to copy and paste your success, that's actually very beautiful, because it saves a lot of building materials, and it saves a lot of energy, and it basically reduces the overall, not only carbon, but material footprint or backpack of the energy we need. And I think we all agree that like the internet is a little bit like, I don't know, like the blood vessels or the nervous system of us as humanity becoming conscious globally. So I think from the first example, I can already extrapolate a lot of learnings. And yeah, curious on maybe two more examples.
Yeah, well, maybe it would make sense to go into the details as to how is classical investing or venture capital working, and what is the difference between integral investing applied in the same sense, in the same asset class.
Yeah,
So
happy.
we have 5 steps in total. So the first is, let me make it simple. So integral investing has a motto, and the motto is the parity, equality between people, planet, profit or prosperity, financial sustainability with passion and purpose. What does that mean? And we go through all these. So this is what we are actually doing in a very simple way. The 6 P's. And I like to say it's the 6 P's. So sex is included in there, women are in there, the joie de vivre is in there, the joy of life. So how do we implement that when it comes down to really doing the work? Number 1, we look, of course, we are investors, people submit a business plan or an executive summary. And if we are interested because of the topic and because we understand the technology, we understand we are experts, we don't invest in stuff that we don't know. I don't know how to make bread, unfortunately, or, start a bakery because I don't know, but I do know how to identify technology for data centers. And so we look at the business plan and evaluate them with the integral lens. But in detail, it's the process to the traditional venture capital or investment due diligence is pretty much the same. So we look at the business plan, sales, blah, blah, blah. The whole thing is well developed, well available. But it doesn't stop there. So we don't make a decision based on that. And that's where my PhD comes in. The second step is we look at the, Club of Rome factors. What is the strategy is how can we implement the UN SDGs, which are 17, right? It's important that the entire planet benefits within planetary boundaries by 2050. What does that mean? We have 17 UN SDGs. We want to really help everyone, live a good quality of life and thrive on this planet. That's in general. In the book, and I've written extensively on this, it's all outlined in detail. Within planetary boundaries, we have 9 planetary boundaries, and we have already left 5 or 6 in this safe environment. So how does the investment contribute to that? I cannot go into the details. That would be a different podcast. And also the carbon neutrality and how we can, by 2050, set ourselves up to win. So that's the second. Does that contribute to that? So that's part of the sustainability strategy, if you so wish, although we talk about integral sustainability. Then number 3 is people promise the moon until they get money and they get what they think they need. So from a due diligence perspective, what are the chances? How can we go into a process to make sure that what people say is what they will be able to deliver? That's a different thing. We all talk a great deal when the day is long enough, like in the summer, but what we can truly deliver is a different thing. And this is where my PhD helps me a great deal, because I came across extraordinary tools and tests from Stanford, Harvard, and MIT that really help me personally see where I am at and where I need to grow, and where other people are and where they need to grow. And not only individually, but also how we together in a team can grow together. And I want to emphasize that this is not something that we're doing in order to test them. No, it's us together. How can we together build a team that together can implement something that helps all of us? So by doing these tests, we do them together and we do them with us and amongst ourselves. We see where we are at. What is the status walking into the deal? What is it that we can do best, and where do we need support individually? And we are very complex individual. I mean, there are Harvard Professor Howard Gardner identified 9 different intelligences. Ken Wilber speaks about 12. So we are extremely complex. But it's only when where we live, where's our center of gravity that determines across all intelligences, emotional, cognitive, psycho-spiritual, and so on. The center of gravity has to be at a world-centric level in order for us to be able and in a position to really, really go beyond ourselves and not just take care of our egocentric needs and psychopathologies. So that's where such tests are important. And then, so that's step 3. And then step 4 is, now that we know the team, we are also looking at individuals, we are looking at the team and how the team works together, can work together, and what can be complemented in order to support the team evolve and really make their dream and our dream come true. And that's then, there are several other tests. 5 dysfunctions of a team is, for instance, a wonderful tool to apply in this text, in this context. And then, of course, step number 5 is we put this all together and make a decision whether or not to invest. But it's about us together, and we allocate 3% extra to team development and individual development. And when people open up, it's not about testing. It's not good or bad. It's not this for profit, not for profit, good or bad. No, it's about us as complex human beings and how we can work together with each other to really make our dreams come true for the benefit of all. So this is the theta model of the due diligence process. I hope this helped clarify. And now I can give you an example of a positive example and another.
Before I ask you for an example or two, I try just to apply like common sense, because when I read your book, I mean, it's a little bit also when I personally met Ken Wilber, you know, just clicked the boxes and I had this like, why is actually not everybody applying this, because this is like so commonsensical. So when I summarize this in like Alistair terminology is, obviously you need to look at the numbers. Okay, check the box. Then when you want to support an endeavor, a project, which is a company, I also liked you know, being critical, you know, towards needs, does it need to be for profit or non-profit, but I want to leave that aside. But again, apply common sense that when you want to support something that makes a contribution towards a thriving humanity, including other sentient beings within planetary boundaries, and then obviously you need to look or try to look or apply, you know, methodology. Where are the people individually, but also as a team standing? So anyhow, I feel just like summarizing this, because for me, it feels so commonsensical. And I want to highlight that from my side, it's not about you or me. What interests me most about this integral investing approach, and this is why I want to support you in like kind of having more people know about it, because I really think it's almost like injecting commonsensical DNA through a lens that can actually be applied in a pretty elegant, smart, and simple way. So I hope, and I know you get a lot of response, you know, all around the planet from your book, that also quote unquote less integral people, people that are still stuck more in the old paradigm, get inspired and ultimately move wherever their needle is within their investment decisions. So anyhow, this was a blurb from my side, and yeah, super curious to listen into an example where that happens.
Well, thank you so much, Alistair. It's only through us working together toward clarifying complex things and, inviting people toward a better world and creating the vision that a better world is possible, that things change. So, because that helps the acceleration of the consciousness development toward a stage where we all recognize that we're on the same boat. And that's the kind of, so integral investing for me is just another application of this bigger, evolution of consciousness. And that applies for every, human being and collectively. So an example where the tools actually helped us not to invest was there was a wonderful, smart person who came to us at a conference and introduced us to his AI tool, and I'm not going to go into details so that it doesn't become identified, but told us about an extraordinary product that he had developed using artificial intelligence, a cognitively brilliant person. And then we invited them over to look at the team. And he came, there were like 6 people, and we spent about 4 hours in our office. And he had brilliant people working for him. However, every time we asked the question, regarding sales, regarding accounting, regarding human resources and so on, he was the one responding. He was not leading his people. He was the leader. He told everyone else what to do. And that doesn't work. A good leader is empowering other people to do the work. And, if you don't see him or her, that's a good leader. It's the opposite of this narcissistic culture that we're currently cultivating. So yes, when asked, you should respond, but, to take over from everybody else, it's not proper, and it's not going to work. Why? Because as an investor, you are investing in a king, and that doesn't work. So because this king is going to build, a kingdom, and you are a vassal to that, right? And everyone else reports to him. So that wouldn't work, because he only cares about himself, not other people. Another wonderful example, so we didn't invest. Let me see another example where, well, we have, over 30 years, we had extraordinary investments. So what I would, I think that let me leave it at that at this point, and as an example where something didn't work. And
let's zoom out a little bit and I want to invite you not to look into the crystal ball, because we know we don't know what the future will look like. Most likely we're all facing challenging times in the decades ahead. But when you take an overall look at impact investing and maybe even broader ESG investing, and you see your contribution, and without being childish, we hope for us as humanity, to make the shift towards a planetary civilization. What do you think are the biggest levers that will move the needle in the overall investment, impact investing space? Is it is it the big transition of the money? Is it more people applying the scrutiny of the model? Is it more the internal component of people needing to embrace that they do the inner work? Is it all of that? So I'm curious to listen in, where do you see the ripple effects of your work? And yeah, maybe we can both take a positive outlook.
I understand. So let me, in addition to studying computer science and psychology and so on, I studied history because I'm extremely interested in history, and I see how history, we can learn from history a lot. And so there is a very famous anthropologist, his name is Joseph Tainter, and he wrote The Collapse of Complex Societies. There are many extraordinary research that's been done around. Ray Dalio just published a good book also from a financial perspective, where he also analyzes history. But in Collapse of Complex Societies by Joseph Tainter, he actually argued that evolved societies, such the Mayan and the Roman societies or the Sumerian societies, they collapsed because of the society no longer could sustain or finance the complexity of the society. And we see that happening right now. You know, the old ways can no longer be financed. So for the longest time, ever since the financial crisis, 2008, various governments around the world, they decided to print more money. It's called, quantitative easing, and throw it into the market in order to finance actually a collapsing structures. And we see how weak these structures are. For instance, now that Putin has challenged all of us. So we have not looked at the most important sectors of the society, like transport, like energy, education, and others. And we haven't taken care of, they're not sustainable. COVID showed us that digitalization could have been done. I mean, I brought, the first ISP, internet service provider in Germany, went public in 1997, and it took us until 2019, 20 to see that, oh my God, we need the internet in schools. Oh, duh. So just to give you an example how slow we're moving, but the planet doesn't wait for us. So we speak in economics of a law that is called the law of diminishing returns. So you spend more money and get less for the same amount of money. So, and this is the current society in which we're operating, right? So when we're looking at how can we shift, what are the top-down sectors of the society that need to be addressed? And my personal hope, and actually it's not a hope, it's actually conviction that we will succeed, comes from another law that Ray Kurzweil actually named the law of accelerated returns, where you invest, and this is an example, an iPhone. You invest in building an iPhone, it costs millions. You invest in, but then now everyone, can get in Africa, in the most remote areas, that's actually a means to make a living, and it costs literally nothing. So we have, because the law of diminishing return, accelerated return, so you get more with less, right? And for the first time in human history, we have that. We have on one hand the law of diminishing returns. In the past, more capital printed to sustain a falling society. But the law of accelerated return is doing exactly the opposite through exponential tech. So what happens there? So you have the speed, the cost effectiveness, and the power of evolutionary process increase exponentially over time and becomes deflationary. So inflation, law of diminishing returns, and now we have the law of accelerated returns. It is possible. So it is possible with this kind of technology that occurred through not only through the individual genius of an Einstein or people before Pasteur and all these individual genius, but now everyone through the internet and the technology, the genius of the individual converge to the genius of the collective. And you see how this convergence of technology, you see them in a smartphone where you have computing converging together with network capacity and batteries and sensors and GPS and digital imaging, and it's all into one device. And of course, now if we use that genius and that foundation to address the UN SDGs within planetary boundaries, and that together paired with a mindset, with a consciousness mindset at world-centric, not egocentric, that's where my conviction comes from, that we will succeed. Yes, many, many millions and billions of people will probably die, me included, but that doesn't mean that consciousness doesn't survive. So that's where I got it. Does that answer your question?
I'm trying to summarize what I get. So for me, it sounds like this is actually one of my biggest hopes, is that through us, not only perceiving, but being able and given the agency to conspire globally with allies on a world-centric level, and committing ourselves to building regenerative business models, making it different, taking action in politics, in advocacy, through like everything that is possible in within our, let's say, given boundaries, that we build almost like a hive mind that solves the global challenges ahead. What I find particularly interesting when I want to hop on that, maybe that's a good last question into your direction, is within the law of accelerated returns, and us meditating since decades, you obviously a little bit, not a little bit, like 2 decades longer, and technology being ubiquitous and also easy to use, I see huge possibilities and ripple effects for people applying the methodology, the scrutiny, and with all of the world wisdom available to lift more people up to a world-centric stage. So I'm curious, maybe even you have an investment or a vetting process going on. Where do you see the link in between the law of accelerated returns and personal development, meditation, healing, well-being? Yeah, curious to listen into that.
Well, that's again a simple question, but it's a very complex answer. So there are in order to ensure the future of life means food for people. So we need to make sure that the food that is, that is generated on the planet can, despite planetary boundaries being distorted, can sustain food. Sustain the people, provide the food necessary. And so I see the role of technology again and genius come in, and through synthetic biology and precision protein and fermentation, protein fermentation, creating the protein, for instance, that people need instead of raising cows and producing more CO2, and the same, local agriculture in the cities and so on. So artificial meat through synthetic biology is one thing, and then also and the price is going down too. So the law of diminishing returns applies there too. Just to give an example, 1 kilogram of of synthetic protein, artificial meat, cost 10 years ago, several $100 billion probably. I don't know for a fact. Probably, I don't know, whatever
the
number
burger
is.
I think the burger was a
it,
couple of million. Yeah.
Oh, well, 1 kilogram cost $1 million, and now you pay 20 euros for, same amount, a kilogram. So it's made progress. So we are, and we saw during COVID, what humanity can do if they decide, if there is the political will. And that's the same as for energy. Putin did us a great service by providing us, challenging us, and now we're coming together. So that's, in all bad, there's a lot of good. So the technology for energy creation, solar and wind prices are, slowing down, and batteries are available and so on. So energy is also available. The same is in transportation. So people need to communicate with one another. So you have the convergence of on-demand autonomous driving, electric cars, batteries, and so on. So these are the most important sectors of a civilization, because we want to save civilization. We don't want to go back to monkey living on the planet. That's where this comes in. And of course, what is needed in order for us to move in this direction is what you mentioned in terms of mindset. So people have to have the conviction that this is the right thing to do, and then go out and do it. Because it's not just snipping your fingers and then it's happening. So we have the technology, and it does converge, but we have time and resource limitations, and we're running out of resources, as you all know. So we need to harvest, asteroids for various minerals and so on. And so we need political will and the capital. So that's where integral investing with this philosophy comes in. So it presupposes, of course, that people have the proper mindset, and that the capital that is limited, of course, goes in that direction, by empowering people who got it and mean it. So mindset is actually key, and we need to get rid of the pollution in our mindset first before we get rid of the pollution on the outside world. So that's my conviction, because we know what we do, but we don't do what we know. So people who come and tell me, and you have mentioned the word impact investing a couple of times. Impact investing has not managed to take off the ground, to take off. So that's why we talk about integral investing, because impact investing has been hijacked by social investing. No, it's environmental investing. No, it's all together. That's why the parity of people, planet, profit. So people need to get that in their head first, because you cannot cut off your left arm just because you mostly use your right arm. But we do that in investing and in building companies and so on. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. So to end today's conversation, since you also have it in the title, integral investing, my question goes somewhat in that direction. There's a lot of people putting Ken Wilber, like the philosopher, on a pedestal, almost making him a guru. So I think that's one misconception. And I think the other one is people are ditching the integral framework, and they're pouring out the baby with the bathwater. So maybe as your final words for this dialogue today, why do you think that embracing the integral framework, and also like obviously modifying, customizing it, it's also an evolutionary framework, and I know Ken would be in total support of that, is why do you think embracing integral as a framework is important and conducive, not only for the let's say, investment or investing community, but overall, just generally as a human being?
Well, as you know, Ken Wilber wrote the foreword to the book. So he has been supporting my work ever since I dare meet him for the first time, because I got my PhD so I could feel comfortable meeting with this extraordinary man. And he's been a friend ever since then. So yeah, so Ken is extraordinary. So, and there are very few people who have taken the time to really read and understand him. But they can still do that. So it's all available. So in order for us to empower ourselves is to, and that's my last recommendation, is to ask ourselves, how do we use our free will? Because right now we use our free will as a generalization. Most people use their free will to not use the mind, to actually waste their brilliant mind, what they have between their, the mind. It's not us, it's not the soul, it's the mind. We have this extraordinary creation that we throw away because we're using our free will to go online, to bitch about other people, instead of using it to create something similar like Einstein, E equals mc squared. And we can all do that. But in order for us to be able to do that, we need to train the mind, to use the mind in a positive way, to use the mind in creating positive thoughts, not negative thoughts that create bad emotions and make us feel miserable, and which then makes us go after other people and criticize them and bitch. And so free will is the key, actually, to using the resources that existence has put into our lap to save ourselves, to work together, to create a better world, to help our own consciousness move to the next level. Because this is what we're called for. Going back to what I said during the call, what we see on the outside, what we perceive as reality is not reality at all. Physicists will tell us that space-time is doomed. All these theories, that we have, physical in physics, space-time, for instance, is one of the key theories, is doomed. Consciousness is not being created in the brain. The brain is just a tool that we're using, that we can use, just like emotions, right? But we are not our emotions. We're not our thoughts. We are not our mind. We are that it looks, observes it all. And once we understand that and connect all the time and be in this higher self with capital S, then we will be able to come up with the proper solutions and, to save consciousness on this planet. Life will continue with or without us. And we have the choice, to use free will to create what we have created right now, good and bad, or move to the next level of consciousness, because we are pure consciousness.
I don't have anything to add for that. I totally agree, Mariana. Thanks so much for the precious time we spent today. Thanks.
Thank you. It's been an honor and a privilege, and good luck to you. We need more people like you, Alistair. You're a godsend. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariana.